All right, I was having a problem. Karen solved it.
Standard operating.
Yep, so everything's, I'm glad. We were away for a week, but nothing changed. Okay, so the next thing that we want to set up here is what I want is when I click on this, when I click on one of these, what I want it to do is change the URL up here, right? And I want it to change the URL to /articles/ whatever the number of the ID of the article I clicked on, right? So that it will go to that page and look up that article. Right now, when I click on any of these, look up at the URL and see what happens. Wait, hold on, let me refresh this. Shit. I don't know why it's not doing it the way I want it. Yeah, it adds this hashtag, right? And that's because we put as the href that it should go to just this hashtag, right? Instead of an actual URL. So there's a couple of things we need to do to make this work. First, we need to find the function that gets fired every time I click this, right? And that is our onClick function that's on the actual A tag that we're clicking on, and that is in the article teaser. So let me go to the article teaser. So this A tag right here, down to here, that's what this title is right here. All these titles are that A tag. Right now, when I click it, it just does its default, any A tag, any anchor tag or link, by default, will try to go to wherever the href is. So if I put like www.google.com, then that's where it would go, right? It would actually take whatever's here, we saw that, and put it up here, right? So I want to stop it from doing that. So we might remember this from way back when we were doing just some basic like vanilla JavaScript stuff. When I have any event listener, which is basically what onClick is, I have access, it will automatically pass something, an object that represents the event, right? So I don't have to put that in there if I don't use it, but now I want to use it. So it's going to pass event to my function here, and I can do event.prevent default, and that's going to prevent it from throwing this hashtag up there, right? So now when I click it, damn it, it doesn't do that anymore, right? It doesn't put that up there. It actually does nothing. All it does is it prevents the default, which means it won't render that hashtag, or not render, but put that hashtag there. And then it runs this function, handle click, and passes it the ID. But handle title click doesn't know what to do at this point, right? So we're going to go all the way back to our home page. And this is the original handle title click. It gets passed down all the way down, right, to this teaser. So right now, it's just console logging every time we click. Actually, we should be able to see that. Yeah, I will in a second. Inspect. Console. And you can see every time I click, it adds this, it just console logs, right? So that's what this function is doing right now. Let me turn that word back on. There we go. So the handle title click function is, it originates in the home page. That's where it starts. That's where we're defining it. And then it keeps getting passed down. Right now, it just console logs. So we don't want it to console log anymore. What I want it to do is change the URL to /articles/some number, right? So we get some functionality from the React router when we set it up. So let's go back to the router real quick. When the router hits this URL, we already established it renders this function, or it renders this component. It also passes this component a bunch of props, a bunch of special props that are unique to React Router. One of them is a history of all of the URLs that we visited, right? So we can use this, we can manipulate this history, this object, or it's like an array, and tell it, we can tell it to basically change the URL, right? And the syntax for that, hopefully when we set it up, it'll make more sense. So homepage gets some special props. So if I go to homepage, and here I do this.props.history.push. Okay, so props gets something called history, which is an array. What does push do to an array? Just adds it to the end, right? And so what I want to add to the end of history is this path, articles, because I'm about to interpolate. And I want article ID. So the article ID is going to get passed in, and we're going to push onto this history object this URL. So now if I go back here, is it still going to break? Nope. And I click this, you see it changes the URL up here. So when I click this, it fires this handle click. It takes in the article ID. Right now we're not passing it correctly, so it's getting rendered as undefined. We'll fix that in a second. But the important thing is we can see this /articles, right? It gets pushed onto this history object, or this history array, and React Router, whatever the last thing in that array is, that's what it's going to put up in the URL, right? So after that gets pushed on the array, the router changes the path here.
Is the history array a state component somewhere?
Probably a state component that the router itself is keeping track of, but it's automatically passing it. In app.js, it gets like this gets rendered with a bunch of props, and it automatically gets passed this history prop, which we can, let's go to homepage, and I think if we do this,
It's part of route.
yes, dot props,
It's not part of your app.
dot history. This is coming from the React router. What else is broken here? What does it hate? I think I'm missing something here. I need this. Yeah, but now the syntax is messed up. Nope. All right. Still mad. What am I missing? Okay.
The div tag is closed on top.
Closed on top. Oh, this.
No, up, line 9.
No, I need that. Hold on.
Line 9.
Line 9.
Yeah, that right there. You're closing it twice.
Where?
You see how that?
Yeah, you got that.
This is for the article.
Yeah, but you have
Oh, wait, no. I need this. No, I don't need that.
Line 9, you have this div tag closed up there and also on the bottom.
I don't see it closed. You're saying get rid of that? No.
Where are you ending that?
The div tag starts here and it ends here.
What's
Right?
what's the backslash on top?
No, the backslash on line 12.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's for the article.
That's for the article list.
Oh, that's weird.
So handle click is this, and it is taking in this.
Oh, I think the console has to be in Swift.
Oh,
boy.
Yeah, because you're returning more than one.
Oh,
Dude.
yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
What?
You have a console log inside your. Does that work?
No, you only yeah, that would.
Oh, right. This needed to be up here.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Cool problem. Okay. So now if I come back over here, let me do this. Here's that history object that I was trying to print that broke everything, right? This.props.history. All I'm trying to prove to you here is that when the router renders the component homepage, it passes it something called history and props. And we can see that right here. It's an object that acts like an array. We can push stuff into it. And when I push something into it, it reads that and changes the URL right now. Right now, it's just passing article/article ID, which is undefined at the moment. Let's keep going, and we'll see if it makes more sense as we keep going. All right. So let's go. Okay, so let's follow this down. So I have handle title click. I'm passing it this function. Handle title click is getting passed to article list. Let's go to article list. Let's ditch all this stuff. Article list here gets this.props.handle title click. Now this is what Karen fixed for me. We're doing article.id, right? But if we go to our JSON file, each article doesn't have an ID, right? Yeah, it doesn't have an ID. So what can we use from this array to take place of the ID? The index, which is what we have to do at this point. This will change later, but for right now, we need something to act like the ID so we can use the index. So I'm going to go back to article list, and I'm going to change this to I. So I'm going to loop through the articles. The articles are coming from, they're getting passed down, but it's just an array, right? So as I go through an array is indexed. So 0 through however many there are here, I have access to I. And the article teaser needs an ID. That article object doesn't have an ID, so I'm going to use its position in the array to act as the ID for right now. And I'm going to call that the ID, and I'm also going to pass it here into the handle title click. Cool. Now let's go back here and see if we fixed it. So now if I click on one, I get articles/1. Come back here, and if we click on the first one, we'll get articles/0, right? Because that's the first thing in the array. Now, what's happening when I go to this URL? Nothing, because I haven't told the router to do anything yet, right? I know this is a little confusing. Are there any questions I can answer right now? Some of this might just be playing with it yourself. Okay.
Is there a reason we're doing it this way versus just interpolating the href originally with the article ID?
Yes, because this allows the router to keep track of where we went. Now we can do the back button. Before we weren't able to do, like if we did it that way, the router is going, this is the way the router wants you to do it. Otherwise, it's not going to be able to keep track of where you've been and where you're going. Okay, so what's next? So now we have this working. So now we have our home page is done. It lists all the articles. Let's ditch this for now. And when I click on them, they go to the right path, but that path is, the router doesn't know about this path yet. So I'm going to go back to app.js, and we're going to bring this new route in. So this new route, when it goes to articles/anything, is going to render the article page, right? So now what's going to happen when we load this is it's going to say article page is not defined because we have not brought it in up here in our imports in our app. So let's first take a look at the article page. So the article page is already kind of stubbed out for us. It has an article component. So now this is going to get a little confusing. There's the article component, and then there's the article page. The article page renders the article component, right? Right now it's just rendering this empty div, and it also has access to our news articles. We're going to need that in a second, okay? So what we're going to want to do is in app.js, we're going to import article page from the pages folder. And now we're rendering it down here. Let's do that. So now let's see what happens when we router. What did I do wrong? Router may have only one child element.
You need to play multiple
Router.
routers. Let's say we can have one.
It only has one child. Or no, it has
Router
more.
two.
Router may have only one child. Oh, do I have to wrap these in a div? I think I do. Yep. So I have to do this. Because that is the way it works.
Because React sets. I just noticed that. Like, if you put something in the div,
Yeah.
frameworks call your code.
Cool. There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at, so now this is working. Like if I go to /article/anything, it renders my article page, right? Which is this component here. So what I really want article page to do is render an instance of the article component, right? So it needs to know, the thing we really need to know on this page is which article to pass to the article component. Because remember, the article component needs the title, the byline, the created date, the image, and the abstract, like all these things, but from a single article, right? So let's go back to article page. And what I essentially want to do here is, I don't really want to say, well, let's keep article page for that. No, let's get it because we don't need that. And in here, I want to do article. But how am I going to how am I going to know what props to pass it, right? Right? I need to know which, basically here I have the news is this JSON file of all the articles. So what do I need in order to pick the right article? The index, right? So luckily the router also gives me access to that variable, right? So let's go back to the app.js real quick. Sorry, we're jumping around so much. So remember I told you that when I make the path with this colon, I'm going to get a variable called article ID, right? And that's going to represent that index. And that automatically gets passed to article page. So the way I access that in article page is, and I kind of forgot one second. Okay, so I'm going to do const. Why won't it let me do const? Because I need to do it in the render. There we go. Const article equals, and news is just an array, right? So it just needs an index. So if I put like 0 here, and then we do, what was it? It's ID. This is going to kill me. That ID. Let's put all this on another line. And then we don't get the ID, do we? So let's just put 0 here for now. And then it was title. And then it was abstract. And then it was created. I mean, there's a dozen ways this could be easier. I don't want to use spread because it's gonna put way more things in there than I want. We could, but there's so many extra things in here. I'm just gonna be like all this other stuff. I'm just gonna be explicit about it. But hold on, let's go back. But you could. I don't think it would break. So I need title. I got title. I got created date. I need image, abstract. I need image and byline.
And it doesn't matter what order you put it in here. Did it on that article page?
It doesn't matter the order, no. So what was I just missing? Byline and image? I think this image thing is going to break, but we'll see. Okay. So this will kind of work. Now I'm going to click on, these are all lorem ipsum, so it's hard to see. This one starts with sit, but if I click on it, I get x whatever the first one is. So this is the first one is this, and I'm always going to get 0, right? If I click here, I get 0. If I click here, I get the right one, right? But you can see the number up here is different. So if I click down here, I get articles 4. So I need somehow to grab that number, and I want to change it here. So the way I get access to it, and this is just where it is, this dot props. So I get past this prop from the router, dot match, dot whatever I called it. and I called it article ID, right? And that, so this.props.match, that's coming from the router. That's just where it stores these variables. And then the variable, I called it article ID, but I could have called it anything. Cool. So now we're going to go. Who? Oh, go ahead.
Is match a React method or a router?
I'm pretty sure, I think it's an attribute that the router gives us.
Like the history thing?
Yes. 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 So here's the article ID. So now it's going to be more dynamic, right? It should pull in any article I click on.
You
So
change the ID?
change, yes, nice. We can make this, so actually, say, const, I don't even think it needs the ID, but I'm going to do it anyway. Const ID equals this. Put that out, put that there. Put ID. Change this to ID. I don't even think it needs the ID. Can I read property title of undefined? Article.title, article. Does this have a title?
Do they all have? Oh.
Abstract, byline. It was working before.
I think
Some have it, some don't. Title's right there.
It's right there.
Title, it's
No.
media.
Aren't we using
No, I think it's because you just went back to the page and the ID wasn't routed because you didn't click on it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. So wait. Yeah. So that's a good point. Read title of undefined.
Do they all have titles? Do they all have titles?
It
Yeah,
should.
one didn't have a title.
Really?
Go back to it.
Hmm.
Go back to your JSON.
Yeah.
Um,
Title.
we console log ID and see what's coming.
Yeah. Did I miss something from this dot? Oh, that's because I did this wrong. So it's even more complicated than I had originally said. There we go. We'll go back in a second. Let's just make sure this is working. Okay, so here's all my lists. If I click on this one that begins with D, I get that. If we click on this one that begins with Q, we get that. Does any of these have images?
Why did you choose such weird titles? Yeah, why are you Latin?
It's not Latin. It's like just like a.
Laura
Like every
Almost
tutorial
always.
uses.
Should have images.
Yeah, they have like functions that generate for you.
So this is working. I don't know why we're not getting any images though. I think because I'm accessing the image incorrectly because it's not image. It's
Yeah. It is.
where's the image? The image is multimedia.url. So that's what I want. So on article page, I want to say article dot multimedia.url.
Is that how it is referencing the article component though?
Well, now it should just be image because I'm passing it as image. Let's go to the article component. And it's just saying if that image exists. But now is there one with a, the first one should have one. I'm confused where our images are. Okay, data JSON. The first one has a byline, blah, 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 blah. It has something called multimedia. It has something called which is, oh my God. Oh, it is an array. All right. So it's multimedia 0. There it is. That's a pain in the.
Are all the pictures going to be that picture?
No. They all have different images, and then there's some that don't, and that explodes.
Oh, you just use it.
So now I have to do this.
Try.
There's probably a better way to do this.
What was the question mark? If.
It's if. So it's like, if this exists, return this, Otherwise, return null. Let's try this again.
If you access null, you can access null.
How did I get this working yesterday? Can I read property URL?
Yes, because when it's not there, you're trying to access it at 0.
It's undefined.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it should, if oh wait, so if
Undefined
this,
Yeah.
there we go. Okay. Now this one, let's find one without a photo. Darn it. We got all these weirdo photos. There we go. Okay. So now it's working. Okay. So let's do a quick review on everything we just did, because we're almost done here. Abstract URL image. Okay. Let's start at the beginning. So we have our home page, right? So let's go to app. When I go to slash, so I have my router. When I go to slash, which is my home page, I render my home component. So let's just follow it down the chain. So we'll go to home page, my home page component. My home page component renders. It returns an article list. All it does is it passes the article list, all the news articles, which is an array that it's reading from this JSON file, right? That gets passed down along with this handle title click. This handle title click pushes this URL into the history that React Router is keeping track of. Keep messing up. Now let's go to article list. Article list takes all of those articles that we had and maps over them to create a bunch of article teasers for each thing in each element in the array. It passes down all the article information that that needs, as well as that handle title click, right? The article teaser is just rendering the link with the on-click event, which is going to call that handle title click and pass it the ID, right? So that's all the home pages. When I click on that, this function runs, and it passes articles/article ID to history, which tells the router to change the URL here. The URL changes, we're jumping all over the place, and once the URL changes, the router reads the URL and says, oh, I'm not at slash anymore, I'm actually at articles, article ID, so I need to render a different component, which is the article page component. When I get to the article page component, I can access basically this URL, this number in the URL, with this syntax, this.props.match.params, and then whatever I called it. So that gives me the ID.
Where did you call it article ID?
In the router, so right here. When I define the route, I define what I want that thing to be called. Let's go, where was I just at? Article page?
Not index.js, like the index.js that talks to the
The index.js?
if there's index.js.
This file? This does something different. We'll go back to that in a second. I want to make sure that we're clear on this thing. What's up?
How does it handle router mismatch?
Ye-
Where we don't, like, we put like /50,000 or something.
Right now, we're not really handling that error very well. If we put this, I think it'll just load nothing. Right? Oh, actually, it will say it can't find, like, it can't find that article. So what we would want to do here is basically here we would do a ternary, and this is pretty common. You would basically say, what the hell would we do? Like basically, if I find the article, then do this. I don't know if I can do this on multiple lines. I don't remember. Else, no. Or else we could do.
You want to do it 404?
Yeah, basically. That's, but I'm just going to say like not found.
gonna have to do it.
It seems to brackets.
Do I do it in brackets? I don't remember the
The
syntax.
article is gonna need, because when it tries to look for article.multimedia, even before it's 0, it breaks. So it's just,
Oh, right. Yeah, let's not really deal with this right this second. But basically, you're just going to do a bunch of if statements. If I find this, then render it. If not, say I can't find it. If you're going to be buried in ternary operators get used a ton in React because of all this. And basically, when you get down to the return, it's pretty common to see like basically if I found what I'm looking for, this, otherwise render something else. Cool. Okay, let's go back. We should be working now. So yeah, right now we are not handling that error very well, but that's fine. If I go to 5, if I go to 7, I should be working right now. Pretty good. That is it. Okay, that's everything for today. Are there any questions?
Oh, that's all for today?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
that's it. No, that's it. That's it. That should be easy, right? So you guys are good? You want to just do tomorrow's too, just for the hell of it? We'll breeze through that one. I know that this is a lot. I promise you, as you start doing it and like messing with the errors yourself and tracking errors down yourself, it'll start to click more like how this is working. Any last questions?
So the history,
Yeah.
that's just something that's
From
part of route.
the React router.
Okay.
React router gives us history. The React router also gives us matched params.
And it's just like you can just put stuff in those. Just to access them.
Anything from the route.
So like match params, just so that
Matches.
just accesses like information that you get into history now.
No, match params accesses whatever I put here in the URL.
I see the screen.
Wait, where is it? It's an article page, right? Oh, the history thing.
Yeah, you can.
Sorry, that's in homepage. Stop props.history.
That allows us to go back.
How doesn't it just? Yeah, that's what that's where I got confused. You're like you need the history in order to do the back page.
Yeah, that's bad.
So
So I guess, like,
So it would
it's-
still work if you didn't have
If you just like hard code it into the URL,
that, but you just couldn't.
that's gonna also, it's gonna make another GET request and re-render the page,
right.
which you don't want it to do, because then it's gonna reset everything in the page, including state, if you're keeping track of state.
That back that shows the history of the URL.
Yeah, but it all, like this also allows us to do, teaser. We can prevent the default, because this is not only gonna change the URL, it's gonna make a GET request. And there is no GET request for it to make, because there's no backend for it to make the request to. So we want to prevent it from doing that and just handle it all with JavaScript so that the page doesn't reload. Because if the page reloads, we lose all our state and everything.
Then prevent default, like real quick, don't do this. Do this.
Yeah.
other thing.
It's like, don't do what you normally do. Do this instead.
It's just really letting us fake the HTTP
Yeah.
responses.
Exactly.
Where's default?
Prevent default.
Yeah.
This is actually just a Java. We can do this in vanilla JavaScript. Whenever we have an event listener on something, we get an event object, and we can call a bunch of different functions on that event, and we can get a bunch of different information from that event. One function that comes with the event, this is regular JavaScript, not React, is this prevent default, which reads what the event is trying to do and basically tells it not to.
So
Not
the
to do
default there would be default.
Wait, what?
Would the default for clicking like the on-click there
Would be to try to make a GET request to this whatever I put in this href.
So prevent default basically saying don't treat this like HTML like you normally do something.
Yep. It's basically just saying, well, it's not even saying do something else, it's just saying stop. And then we do whatever we want after that.
Because an on-click won't work without href, right? And then
Right.
so you have to say we want to do an on-click, but I I don't want to do like conflict real quick. I want to stop using it.
Yep, exactly.
I see your page,
Which page?
the actual, yeah. And then can you just like go back and forth, like refresh it a little bit?
He's really just one view.
Yeah. So this is like, just from what I'm seeing right now, this is like way faster than when you're just even messing around the locals in Django.
Yeah, so that's a good point. The Hank's question was, this is way faster. That's a big thing about JavaScript, or about React, is it's faster because it's all, we're never going to a backend. We don't ever have to wait for a response, at least at this point. Eventually we will. But right now we're not waiting for a response. It's just switching between these different components, and it's all happening locally on the machine. And so I think, I don't know if we even went over, like, why is there this huge switch to React into these one-page front-end apps? Some people still don't like it, and it's not always necessary, because it adds a lot of complexity. It really does. And it's getting better and getting better. But it's way faster, and if you have a more complicated app, the push is to put as much of the work onto the user's machine, because computers are so much more powerful, right? They're so fast and they're so quick. So why wait for a response? Why have my server that I'm paying for do all this calculating when I can make the user's computer do it, right? When I can make the client do all that calculation and stuff on their computer. So I send them my whole app over, and then really when we connect this with Django, the only thing Django is really going to do is deliver information every now and then, instead of getting, because right now all these articles are saved locally, right, in a JSON file. But that's not a good way to do it. Eventually what I'm going to want to do is I'll make a get request to my Django backend and say, give me all the articles, or give me the first 5 best up-to-date articles or whatever. And then I will render those on the front end, right? But when I'm just getting JSON from the back end, I'm not getting JSON, HTML, JavaScript, CSS. That's how Django that's how we were using Django before, right? We would have Django look stuff up in the database, but then we would have it inserted into HTML, and we could add CSS and JavaScript, and all that gets delivered. It's a much bigger payload, right? Now we're just delivering the JSON back and forth. And so it's faster, and then while we're waiting, we can do stuff on the front end, like show a wheel or whatever, and stuff like that. So that's why we're making this push. But we're not there yet. That's a little bit ahead. Cool? All right. Let me stop this.